Welcome, everyone. Good evening. My name is Marcia Friedkin. I'm an alumna of the Stern School of Business and a member of the Stern Alumni Council. I received my MBA here in 2013, and it always feels great to be back on campus. I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight for an incredibly exciting program. It's great to see so many alumni here, as well as current students and always faculty. It's my pleasure to introduce, on the other side of the screen, my friend Diane Lennard. Hi, Diane. She's author of the recent book, Strategic Communication at Work, The Impact Paradigm, in a discussion with Stern alumni contributors and moderated by Beth Briggs, who's also over there. Diane joined Stern in 2004 and is currently a clinical professor of management communication. She serves as a communication coach for business students and professionals who want to expand their communication skills and abilities for functioning in diverse work settings. She founded Lennard & Company, a firm that leads communication workshops for educational institutions and businesses in the US, Japan, and India. Our moderator this evening is Beth Briggs, the Assistant Dean for Career Services here at Stern. Beth oversees all aspects of career programming and employer relations for all NYU Stern MBA programs. In conversation with Diane and Beth, we are pleased to have alumni with us here as well. Jessy Hsieh, and they're not sitting in order, so they'll raise their hands. And Gregory, Jenn Wynn, and Bryan Coughlin. You probably figured out which one Bryan was. Each of them contributed to strategic communication at work, and we're pleased to welcome them back to campus to engage in thought-provoking discussion about the book. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you.
I can't see them either. Strategic Communication at Work was published by Routledge this year. The book provides a practical approach to engaging in all types of communication, one-on-one, small group, and large group, to achieve intended results. The conversation about this book will be brought to life by the author, the contributors, and by you, the audience. You will have an opportunity to hear how the impact paradigm is relevant to all of our contributors, and will have opportunities throughout and after the discussion to ask questions. Now, this is what is important. You're not going to get to just sit there passively and listen. This is meant to be an interactive experience and a conversation. This is not just a presentation. Now, please allow me to hand the stage over to Beth, Diane, Jessy, Jenn, Anne, and Bryan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marcia. Thank you all for being here. When Diane asked me to help with moderating a conversation about her book launch, I was really flattered because I get really nervous when I present. So part of what I've been able to do is what Diane has taught me. I'm just going to tell a little story quickly. Okay. I have often spoken at our orientation program, which we call Launch, for all of our incoming MBA students. So usually it's about a group of 400 students. This is one of their first experiences with the career office. What's even more fun about it is that usually my boss, my dean, so my boss's boss, are in the front row, which, no pressure at all. So when I was planning or getting ready to do a welcome conversation with our incoming students, I asked Diane to coach me, which was probably more terrifying than actually having to do the speech because I was so nervous. But it was the most useful thing I'd ever done because Diane really helped me to get comfortable and find my voice and think about how to prepare, not only prepare my remarks, but how to prepare my energy for getting ready to come up in front of a group. So if you ever see me in this sort of setting, a larger setting in the front row, I've always got my legs straight, like ground myself, take deep breaths, so that when someone welcomes me to the stage, I don't come up with all this extra adrenaline and fear. I'm still nervous, of course, but I feel more prepared because of really the amazing coaching and ideas that Diane shared with me through the years. So I'm so grateful. So I hope that tonight you can experience some of what that looks like, and the book is such a great tool to help you think through how to approach any kind of challenging or what you might perceive as stressful communication situation, which actually can turn out to be pretty fun. So one of the goals tonight is for us to have some fun, so we want to share that with you. But I am wondering, so this is your first audience participation moment, if anyone can share just an example of a time when you've been in any kind of conversation that maybe stands out to you in your mind as like, yeah, that was pretty stressful, I was nervous about that. Just kinds of examples of what those have been. I know some of you here, so I will call on you if I need to.
In college, I participated in the United Nations, and we had to...
Just to add to the fun, you get to
in college, I participated in Model United Nations, and we had to get up in front of a room and present our position, representing the country that we were assigned for that semester. And the room, sometimes when we came together for the assembly, General Assembly, mock General Assembly, was 200 to 300 people, which I am very glad I did because it prepared me to speak in front of smaller groups, larger groups. But at the beginning, my natural reaction was just to start shaking, literally shaking. My whole body was shaking. So it was really more of doing and just repetitively doing over and over to become comfortable with that physically and mentally.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing and for being brave for going first, too. Thank you. That's a great example. Other examples?
A good example. I worked for a Swedish company, and I had a meeting with my CEO, flew from Stockholm, and I'd never met him, with a prospect. So we met at the airport to go visit the prospect, whom neither of us had met either. So it was like cross-cultural, multiple people. It was just kind of bizarre. So it went okay, but it was very stressful.
Yeah, and you're going from a really big example. That's a smaller group, but equally as stressful, right? Because it's an unknown situation. Maybe one or two more, if anyone has other.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
What are some different kinds of communication interactions you have at work? A meeting, a presentation, a pitch? What are some examples? Susan Stellick.
I have to talk to you every day, and I get very nervous.
That's not fair.
No, but I will say this: being judged in a conversation.
Okay.
Right. So you take the focus off of yourself, and you're worried that you're going to be judged, and you can lose track. What do you recommend, Professor Lennard?
We're going to get
Dr. Lennard. Okay, but
So sorry.
no, I'm
Don't
kidding.
judge me.
But what are any kinds of communication interactions, not just the ones that make you nervous? Eileen.
Yeah, like there were 2 times in my professional career when I had to give legal depositions. And I was incredibly intimidated and uncomfortable, even though the people who were asking the questions I felt were a little on the sleazy side. But you see, the kind of atmosphere or the weight of what would come of whatever I said, I felt very intimidated, even though I knew my stuff. So it's sort of like, you know, those positions we all have to play.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
By a lawyer.
I don't get nervous about communication so much. I think at my company, the biggest challenge these days has been, are you being strategic or are you being tactical? So there's always this debate about, oh, that sounds tactical or that's not strategic. And so sometimes, you know, I'll say something and people are like, yes, you hit it. And then other times they'll be like, no, that sounds too tactical. And then they'll say it again and I'll be like, that's what I meant. But somehow when they said it, it sounded strategic. So that's the challenge that I find, you know, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a wide range of communication situations that we find ourselves in.
Yeah. And that's part of what I think when you look at the book, it will help you think through how do you approach these wide variety of situations with a strategy in mind. So with that, I'm wondering, why did you write the book? How did this come to you?
Well, I wrote it for all of us because we all communicate every day at work. And I'm actually inspired by the students, the faculty, the administrators, the executives that I coach. And I've heard one particular comment many times, and that is, I feel comfortable engaging in this kind of situation, but not comfortable engaging in this kind of situation. And usually it's, I'm comfortable in a one-on-one conversation, but I'm not comfortable in a large group presentation. So I wanted to create or distill some principles that apply to both and create one framework that everyone can use for every kind of interaction, whether it's with an individual or a group. What I really wanted to do was create a little pocket coach that people could put in their pocket.
Yeah.
Not me, but a book that applied, one framework that applied that people could use in any kind of interaction. So that's why I wrote it.
It's so helpful because it really is like having Pocket Diane with you
Well,
to use the book.
No one wants to put me in their pocket, but a coach, like a pocket coach.
So what is the framework? Maybe tell us a little bit about that approach.
Okay, so I'm going to name it, but I'm not going to go into theory. I'm not going to lecture about it because you're going to hear about how it's applied by these amazing people. So it stands for impact, I-M-P. Is it impact? You know how to spell it. Okay, so 6 things is a lot to remember. So I'll break it into 2 sets of 3. So the first 3 have to do with how you express yourself. So I stands for intending, which is really about identifying what you want as a result of a communication. So you might want the listeners to know something or to do something. So it's the response that you want. It's really identifying outcomes, the outcomes that you want. It's very important. So that's I, intending. M is for messaging. And a lot of people think about messaging in terms of words. I'm referring to messaging as how you convey your thoughts and feelings in 3 modes of expression. So your words, your voice, and your body language. So it's verbal and nonverbal. And what you want is all 3 of them aligned and congruent. So intending, messaging, and P is for presence. And we can all do things that lead us to developing the goal of having fuller presence, which is how we show up. So I am P, which is imp, but it has nothing to do with anything, is about how you express yourself. Intending, messaging, and presence. Then the second 3 all go together. They're about how you interact with others. So A stands for attending, which is, Martin, you're right in the hot seat, so I'm going to pay attention to you. So it's paying attention to the person that you're talking to. So attentively observing and actively listening to the person that you're engaged with, or persons. So that's attending. What goes with it is connecting. So once you've established a relationship, connecting extends it so that you're mutually engaged in the communication. And then the last thing is together. So ACT is about how you interact with others. Together is so that when you're communicating, you're co-creating the experience so that it's shared understanding, it's taking actions together. So it's co-creating as co-participants. So that's IMPACT. So I stands for intending. No, this isn't a quiz. M stands for messaging. The reason I'm recapping it is because you're going to hear it in action when people tell their stories. So I is intending, M is for messaging, P is for presence. A is for attending to people, C is for connecting, and T is together. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
That's it, I'm finished.
No, it's so excellent. And the book does, I know Diane's not talking about the book, but there's so much amazing information about the theories behind each part of the framework that help to ground it even more fully and make so much sense in how you think about your communication. But we are so lucky to have 4 contributors who are all featured in the book with us this evening to really walk us through some examples of how they've been able to approach strategic communication situations by leveraging the framework. And I think as each of our contributors, maybe as you introduce yourself, just share who you are and what you're doing now, and then we'll go through one of the situations you were in, your workplace conversation. So there's going to be time for questions after all 4 of our contributors share their stories with you, and we definitely want to have questions. So please hold them, remember them, but we'd love to have them after we've gone through them all. Jessy, do you want to start us off?
All right, hi, I'm Jessy Hsieh. I graduated from the MBA part-time program here at Stern in 2010. And at that time, I was working in banking. So that's where the setting of my story is.
Yeah.
And currently, I am so fortunate and so really honored to be actually part of the faculty at the Management Communication Department. So that's kind of a little bit what I'm doing now. But I guess should I just get started?
Tell us about your workplace conversation.
Okay, so right, she gave a spoiler alert, Beth already said, just spoiler alert, mine is a workplace conversation. And the reason why I wanted to share this and contribute this is because when I was in the MBA program, Diane, Professor Lennard, she would always just be Professor Lennard to me. She gave me a bit of feedback in one of the classes. A lot of times people came to this class, it was a presentations class, it's our business communication course. At the end of the presentation, she's like, Jessy, you're very performance-y. Just have a conversation with us. And when I was working at the bank, it was just like, that was super profound to me because it was all about performance. I felt like my life was just about high performing, always being on top of your game, doing all these things, making sure that I was always willing to take on more responsibility, super enthusiastic, all these things. And so when she said performance, you're very performance-y. The bank I was working, our tagline was passion to perform. It was like, this was what I felt. It was so entwined with my identity. And over time, it was just really not sustainable. I mean, it was 2008. We all know what happened in the fall of 2008. I was working in a bank, and I'll be honest, shit was hitting the fan. I mean, people were freaking out, they were getting laid off. It was really high intense and really stressful time. But yet, when we talk about conversations, we're like, our conversations just seem so flippant or just casual. It was like, should we have bagels or Bialys at the bris? Well, of course Bialys. Well, that was my preference. Or the LIR is so busy today. Or let's take the 2-3. Gotta take the 2-3. The second car in the back. That'll give you the entrance right to the building. These types of conversations that just seem like, hey, we're just shooting the shit. Meanwhile, it's like I saw these people. I saw my boss. He was my mentor. He recruited me for my previous job. We joined his team in this bank, and yet we never really talked about anything real. And at the end of the day, our team was getting smaller and smaller. A lot of people were getting laid off. We had acquired 2 mortgage origination businesses. So if you heard about collateralized debt obligations, there it is. And our responsibility was to review all these underlying loans that were part of this collateralized debt obligations and report on potential fraudulent and suspicious activity. So you can imagine that there was a lot of reports. And everything just felt like I was getting squashed and really, really unsustainable. I was working 60 hours a week. I had to come to school twice a week. I had a family life, I had all these things, and I had this responsibility that I had to review all the reports that were coming from our team before my boss would review them and approve them. It was a year, I had this responsibility, I just took it on, I just did it, did my extra hours, and I got shingles. You know, I just let it go. So when she says, you know, just have a conversation with us, I decided that I need to have a conversation with my boss about this. You know, what is it that I wanted him to do? What is it that I wanted to get at the end of that conversation? And when I really honed down to it, like, I could get really pissed. I could have been like, you know, I deserve a promotion, I deserve extra money, I could have gone in there being like, I demand all those things. But at the end of the day, even if I had that extra money, even if I had that promotion, I knew that I could no longer do this. I couldn't do this extra responsibility and do it well. I couldn't even do it. Added on to everything I had to do. So I go into his office, you know, originally, you know, I have this face, like, I'm always smiling, and I was like, Dave, I'll have to say Dave, because that's how he's in the book. Dave, you know, can we talk about something? And at that moment, he knew. He was like, what's wrong? I'm like, you know, nothing's really wrong. I just want to tell you about, like, I'm really great about these opportunities. I'm really thankful that you supported me in my MBA. But I really, this extra added level, I really can't do this anymore. And that just opened the door. Because he had this proclivity to kind of like rub his head like this when he was stressed. And it was opening the door to be like, hey, with all this stuff that's going on, what is it, what do you think about it? You know, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? How do you feel? You know, we know we're really stressed. What is it that we can do so that we can work together on something to make this something more? So by the end of the conversation, we really were shared both of all the responsibilities. There's an opportunity for him to tell me that he really appreciated the work that I did. It wasn't that he was just adding on something. He really trusted my work product. He really trusted me on the team. And that's why he knew that I could do it. So by the end of the conversation, you know, not only did I get agreement that, hey, instead of me doing this level, why don't I just train everyone else on the team so that the work product can develop, you know, I develop a manual, I can develop a way so that everyone can be empowered to review their own material so that when it gets to you, it's of that standard that you would like. So by the end of the conversation, I got my intent. No longer going to do this. Also, I was able to demonstrate some sort of leadership responsibility without actually having that title. And then finally, we really created this solution together after that conversation. It wasn't just about me getting what I want. It really was an opportunity that we could share about something we were all going through and then looking towards the future about what might make it better.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Jessy. There's so much to it. I really appreciate that you were thinking through how you're going into that conversation with someone you were regularly in communication with, right? You had worked with him for a long time, but you were coming to have a different kind of conversation for the first time. Just thinking about when you were going back into his office, how did you prepare yourself for it?
Well, yeah, so it's like, can you picture, I mean,
I
Brian's in banking, you know, I don't know if it's, or just any office, it's like these cubes, right? Like these walls, like I'm sitting in this desk, it's like this gray cube. His office is like right there in front of me. His door is right there. I knew it was, you know, midweek, where our reports aren't due until the end of the week. So I was like, okay, this is not gonna be a stressful time for him. You know, and I just was like, he would usually come towards, you know, if he needed something, Jessy, open the door, you know, come on.
Right.
But I was like, no, I need to go to him. And so I was perseverating over this for a really long time. Yeah. Really long time. And finally I just knocked on the door and went right in. Can we have a talk?
Yeah. That's it. And so many parts of the framework that you were able to put into action with really having the right intention and thinking about what your messaging would be. Like there's so many pieces of it that you can just hear how you were able to shift someone you have a conversation with every day but when you need to elevate it, how this framework can help you to approach it a little differently.
That you said it better than me.
Thank you, Jessy. Hold on to your questions for Jessy.
So I just want to say all of these stories are in chapter 3. But the point of these stories are that the framework applies to a workplace conversation, it applies to a pitch, it applies to a speech, it applies to an interview, it applies across situations. And workplace conversations is one that we all have.
Right.
So, thanks, Jessy.
Thanks, Diane. So Jenn, will you walk us through your strategic communication?
Sure. Hi all, I'm Jenn. I'm currently a manager at the Obama Foundation, and about half my career has been in management consulting and half in education. So at the time, I was a management consultant at a firm. I don't know how much to say there.
That's perfect.
Great. So at this time, the firm that I was at, strategic consulting firm, management consulting firm, had decided that it was going to start a few new ventures. And so I was on the very tiny team. I think at that point we were 6 or 7 people, you know, with a firm that is global and has, you know, many thousands of consultants. I'm on this tiny team that's going to launch one of 4 ventures for the firm globally. It's a management and leadership training program that we are delivering to our clients. So we're giving some of the stuff that we do internally, we're giving it externally to clients. This particular client is a large financial services firm, a global financial services firm, and we are providing this management and leadership training to the top 200 senior leaders globally. This is also a $3 million client, which is the biggest client we've had because we just launched. And so this is what's going to prove to the firm whether this is a viable venture or not. So everything is riding on this client. I am the manager of the team, we've just had our first training take place, and all of our goals were to hit participant survey satisfaction ratings that were 85% or higher, and the data had come in the 70s. Financial services firm. If there's one thing they care about, it's the numbers. And we're really transparent with our clients, so they've already seen all the data. And we are heading into what we call a steering committee meeting. We're heading into this meeting with the 7 project leads on the client side, and I need to convince them of 2 things. One, this is my message here, that the data does not concern us. The data backs up the impact of the program. 2, you should continue this 9-month training program even though we are only in month 2 and the numbers are not where you want them to be. I was terrified. But I did a lot of prep work. So as we've shared, the client cares about the numbers. There's a second thing they care about, and that is the stature, the status of the people from whom the information is coming. So I did 2 things with my team to prepare the message. The first was to actually dig into the qualitative data, and we found that 2 major questions that they cared about. One was a value for time spent metric, and the other was, would you recommend this to a colleague? Those 2 metrics, when you looked at the qualitative data, actually spoke more highly of the value than the numbers. And that the part that they were rating lower was the time spent. It was a 4-hour training, and they felt that if they could get all that same information for just a little less time, that they would absolutely recommend this. And so when we were able to parse out the data that way, we were then able to quantify the qualitative comments. So 22 out of 25 participants in this session, 88%, or 23 out of 25, 92% said that the impact was incredible. I just needed it to be a little shorter, or could you have done it in less time? And once we were able to quantify the qualitative comments, that made a big difference. So I had the meeting start with our director, speaking to how actually exciting the data was, and then he handed it over to me to walk them through the numbers. And having the director start mattered because they cared about status, and once he lent that credibility, I was able to go from there. So I walked them through the now quantified qualitative data, and then I pulled out comments that came from certain market makers and just other high power, informal power and formal power folks in their organization, because I knew the names mattered, who it came from. And I shared the quotes of impact from those individuals. And seeing the client, so there's 7 of them, and one of them in particular, who in the book we call Yuri. Yuri is the director of strategic initiatives for this global firm, and he's basically the right-hand man to the CEO. And whatever Yuri thinks, that's what matters. And Yuri, in this meeting, who he's typically on his phone, no matter who's talking to him, puts his phone down early and is listening. And so this is really encouraging for me. And so then there were 2 other things that I really focused on doing. One of them, I just have to laugh because you said a piece of feedback that Diane gave you. So one of mine, you're not going to be shocked to hear this, Diane's feedback for me was, stop smiling so much. What, me? Don't be so smiley if that's not what your message is about. And this message was not a smiley message. So I cut the smiling out. And this speaks to the, I've already spoken to the words piece of my message. This speaks to the body piece of my message. I stopped smiling. I sat up straighter. My inclination is, I like people, I'm very comfortable. I sat up straight. I leaned in. And then my voice was different. So there's like a smiley chit-chatty Jenn, and then there was the emphatic, I'm telling you this. My voice got a little deeper.
I'm so proud of you.
Diane, I listened to you. I knew that they are straight shooters, right? So I needed to acknowledge the numbers for what they were and also tell them what I knew about the data and the insights I could offer that they didn't have. So looking people in the eye, making sure that my voice was a little deeper, a little louder, a little more emphatic and forceful than I would normally be. And even as I'm telling you, and I'm starting to get into it, so let's cut that out. But the point being that I really do feel like the pieces you have called out to me about aligning my words with my body, with my voice, did make a big difference. And the conclusion was twofold. One, that they were going to let us go on with this program, which was huge. It saved our venture. But second, and I think, I haven't heard you say this co-creation part too, but I think this gets to it. The second piece was they said, you're gonna cut down the time of this training. You're gonna make it 3 hours or less, and you're gonna make the next round of it, you're gonna deliver it to us first, meaning the 7-person steering committee. We're gonna give you any other tweaks that we think are right for our audience, because we know our firm better than you do. And once you do those tweaks, then we'll be in a good place to go. And that was a total game changer. Both the fact that we got to continue the program, but also the impact, because then they wound up giving us stories and examples that resonated better with the client, and things just landed on multiple fronts. So thank you.
It's a great example of co-creating.
Yeah, and the impact of the impact framework, because I feel like you really touched on so many components that were there, particularly on the messaging and how you thought about the words you used, how you position your body, how you used your voice. It's such a great lesson. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thanks, Diane.
Okay. Next up, hold those questions, reminding you, is Anne. It's good to see Anne and can you walk us through your communication situation and thinking about the framework?
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Anne. I am currently an associate brand manager with Colgate-Palmolive. Happy to answer any questions you have about that. It's a very fun place to work. The location for my communication situation was while I was a student here at Stern. So I was getting ready to interview. Those of you, I think there are a few current students in the room, you're probably going through that right now. You know how stressful it can be. So for me, it was specifically so because I'm actually going to fast forward, or I'm going to rewind to when I was 10, and this is going to go into why I was stressed out during my interview. When I was 10 years old, my parents took me to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I'm from Georgia. Anyone here from Georgia? Nope, just me.
And husband.
Yes, my husband. Perfect. And my parents took me to the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, and Itzhak Perlman was performing the Tchaikovsky Concerto as the lead solo, and I was hooked. I was sitting on the edge of my seat. I knew that this was what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So fast forward a number of years, I had a career in classical music. I ended up working in a number of arts nonprofits, both from an administrative perspective as well as from a performance perspective. So I then, in my late 20s, decided I wanted to make a pivot and came here to Stern. And so that is now, we're back to where we were. I'm with my communication situation. So one of the things that I knew from being a musician was the power of preparation. So is anyone in the room a musician or play a musical instrument? Okay. So you know how much you have to practice prior to a performance. So if you all probably heard the term 10,000 hours of practice gets you to Carnegie Hall. It's not necessarily true because you can actually rent out the hall. So you'll see a lot of middle school bands there, but anyways, you get the point. For me though, what I love about sort of making a parallel with interviews is I was able to bring over a lot of what I had learned as a musician. So as an example, everyone here probably knows the STAR framework: situation, task, action, result. For me, that was like my scales. So I would never be able to go into preparing for something if I didn't have my foundation just absolutely solid. So as I was starting to build my story, I knew that I had to have these different vignettes that told my story, and in such a way that it wasn't just me talking to myself, that I knew exactly who I was talking to. And in this situation, as I kind of already buried the lead, I wanted to go into consumer products. So I was really trying to think about how I could frame my musical experience into a marketing framework. And so thinking about different ways that I could say, rather than being in an ensemble of people, I was working with cross-functionals. That sounds so corny saying that out loud, but it definitely was kind of the mindset I was putting myself into. But the thing about going into an audition is it's not about kind of thinking through the day of or even the week before. The week before an audition, I was always already there. I could have auditioned 1 week before the audition because I had already done all of the prep work and I'd already prepared myself for every possible obstacle. So I knew that when I was getting ready for this interview, specifically with Colgate, which was my #1 choice, I really had to be ready to sit down with them even before the actual interview itself. And one of the interesting things for me that I really saw as the part that I wanted to focus the most on was the fact that I didn't have any marketing on my resume. The word wasn't even on my resume. I intentionally left it off because I didn't want to mislead them and think that I'd had any marketing roles. I've been primarily in education and pretty much also, of course, performance. So when I was wanting to focus, I spent a lot of time preparing for that question. For the question, you're not even a marketer, why should we hire you? And I actually expected more people to ask me that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But the funny thing about that was I compared that experience to when I was playing a piccolo solo on Shostakovich's 10th Symphony. I don't know if any of you know what that means, but I'm going to continue. And it was for an audience of about 2,000 people. So the thing that I actually kind of draw from that experience was like I practiced that whole symphony, but I really, really worked on that solo because it was just me by myself and this very quiet space. And so I think the funny thing is, like, as a musician, we love to play through things that are easy. We love to play through things that feel great, that feel comfortable. We could do that for hours and hours, but that's not how you get better and that's not how you improve. It's about kind of focusing on the parts of yourself that need the most work. So for me, that was really what I was focusing on when I was looking at these interviews and thinking about how they could trip me up or how there would be a moment that maybe I didn't have the best possible foundation with those STAR vignettes that I developed. And actually, when you were talking about the UN and shaking and trembling, that really resonated with me because when I had first done a dress rehearsal with that piccolo solo, felt I was shaking, and so I was like, all right, I gotta go back to the practice room, really get that solid ground, and then I can feel better about myself. Because being a musician, the performance is all about presence. It's not about doing anything on the fly or feeling like, you know, you're kind of learning things as you go. You need to be there and you need to know exactly how you're gonna perform and how you're gonna show up. And so that was me with these interviews. I knew that I wanted to walk into the room and just be my best authentic self. And I think it's especially interesting because I definitely felt much more comfortable talking to people than playing for 2,000 people on a piccolo, but the actual act of needing to know that when I walked into that room, any question they gave me, I would have prepared. And I didn't memorize anything. I think that's probably an important note to add, is I didn't reply with canned answers. I did want it to be a conversation, but I at least had the talking points at the back of my head. And so with Colgate, they had actually multiple rounds of interviews, which is a typical thing for some of the consumer products firms. The second day was with the HR rep. And I think, as you can imagine, that was going to be the one where she knew exactly what she was going to ask. She knew the 2 brand managers that we had interviewed with were asking behavioral questions, some things about marketing case studies. This was all stuff that we prepared. This was what my MBA got me ready for. The HR rep, on the other hand, was going to try to find those holes in my resume to really make sure that they were being intentional about who they hired. And so she threw me the curveball. She threw me the question, marketing isn't even on your resume. Why should we hire you? Had I not prepared for that, and had I not prepared to really be truly excited about this company, I probably would have frozen and I would have started trembling and shaking. However, I had the answer, and I knew that it felt like an authentic answer. My answer was, I guess I can share that as well, I think it's in the book, is that I was marketing a centuries-old art form to new audiences. So that marketing wasn't anywhere on my resume, but that I had actually been doing that all along. She loved that answer, so clearly.
It all worked out well.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of in a nutshell what my communication framework was, and it really was about presence. There are other elements, of course, that tied into it from the impact framework.
Yeah.
But it was...
I think there's one part in the book, if it's okay for me to just go into it, that I was struck by, which I knew your background when you were in the MBA program, and I knew what you were interviewing for. But I loved how you described how you prepared for the actual interviews and really kind of taking yourself away from the chaos of the community, because the building gets sort of stressful when we're in the midst of interviews. And it was such a good, it was just such a thoughtful way of preparing that I hadn't known you were doing.
Yeah, I had an entire notebook that I would just consistently track all of these different star vignettes, and also anything that felt inspiring that I knew that I could tie back to who I was. One of the things I did as well that was a great piece of advice I received from a Stern alum was to take all of my roles from when I was a musician and all of the roles that I would expect to do in my new role as a brand manager, and actually connect the dots. And I would try to remove myself from Stern to practice these things because, as you mentioned, like, you can get distracted, you can be invited to beer blast, there are all these different things, and it's just, you can be pulled in 1,000 different directions. So for me, it was really trying to find those moments that I could just be in my sort of, and it's very much like being in a practice room, because... But
also knowing when to just say, now I need to ground. Like, I thought that was also really unique to your story, and that your training as a musician had informed, I've gotten to this point, I'm ready a week ahead of time, as you just said. Now I'm just gonna sort of shut off and not focus on it.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah,
watch Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, the morning of, so that's something actually I did as a musician as well. There was a really stressful audition we had with the Wind Quintet I performed with, and we were walking through the halls, all the ensembles were practicing vigorously and playing through the pieces, and my quintet and I were playing hide and seek, because we were just like, we just need to not be focusing on this right now.
Yeah.
We were running around, people were like, that's a crazy ensemble, they're clearly not gonna get it, and then we won. So it was pretty, I highly recommend just being playful in the morning of, and for me, during the interviews, I think I was watching West Wing at the time. I was binging it actually, I was watching a little bit too much. But so I was watching those shows the morning of and not even thinking about the interviews, because if I didn't, at that point, you can't change anything. It's just, that's it. You're gonna go into that room. So, yeah.
It really is about that preparation and what's right for you, and how you know you can show up centered and grounded. I don't know what happened when you were meeting your CEO, but I would imagine coming off a plane is not the best way to get centered, but probably there's things that you even thought about doing to just have that exhale. And I love that part of the framework. The whole framework's amazing, but that part, I think, in your story was so resonant.
And I think I came into your office and talked to you.
Maybe.
And you were opening boxes of shoes from Zappos or something, and I stood at your door.
That's my preparation.
And I stood in your doorway and I said, "Can I just talk to you for 10 minutes?"
I kind of remember that.
Yeah, and you said yeah, and we just talked about life.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm a little nervous. I just want to talk about nothing.
I
And
remember that.
yeah.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Thank you so much. And last but not least,
Way to put me at the end. Live up to all those good
my
stories.
friend at the
I
end.
kind of was just like listening and totally forgot what I was supposed to talk about.
No, I don't believe
so I'll try
you.
and live up to it. But so I'm Bryan. I was in the Marines for 7 years, and when I came to Stern, I graduated in 2017. When I came to Stern, I was immediately thrown into this investment banking recruiting season. Didn't really have any idea what I was getting into, but they go through and try and teach you what it's all about. And I went to the first event and I quickly realized this like cookie cutter way of going through this networking is just not my style. It's not for me. No offense to the people that teach that stuff. It's just you gotta like take it and manipulate it to what suits you. So I decided, all right, how am I gonna go through this process and what are my strengths? Well, after serving in the Marines for 7 years and 2 deployments to this place called Sangin, Afghanistan, I realized I do have this ability to network, and I just did it in a different form. So I was an infantry officer in the Marines, front lines type of person, and we went out and we would clear villages and of any bad people, and then try and help the village elder like reestablish governance. And really, you have to get that person on your side, whoever it is, and you have to convince them that what you're trying to do here is good for them. And that's a very tough situation to be in. And I kind of, when I came back to this recruiting at Stern, I realized I'm trying to convince them that I can do this job as well. So I brought a lot of parallels over from my previous experiences and applied those, but instead of the cookie cutter investment banking recruiting methodology. And it all happened actually. Beth was given a panel with one investment banker from one firm, and it was a pretty wild conversation, and I didn't really know what banking, do you remember who this was? It starts with an M, and her last name rhymes with Roe. But yeah, we'll talk later. So, Michelle Go.
Oh boy,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
she's a very straight shooter.
Yes, very straight shooter.
Refreshing.
Yes, and so we were talking, or Beth and her were talking on the panel, and then 20 minutes later we're having lunch and she comes and sits down at the seat right next to me. I was like, oh, hey, I hear you're a banker. Like, I played Monopoly as a kid as well. So we have that in common, but like, let's talk about real stuff. What do you like to do? So we started talking like about traveling, and she was really, really into traveling. I think she's still traveling the world right now.
I don't know that she's a banker any longer.
What's that?
I don't think she's a banker
she's not a banker anymore. She moved on to traveling, which is a pretty good move. So she moved on to traveling the world, but we talked about traveling a lot. So just like hold that story for a little while. So we move into this recruiting season a couple months later, and the first recruiting event at the firm that I ended up going to, I see this gentleman across the way, and I'm like, that guy kind of looks familiar. I'm not sure, and he has this haircut that's very, like once I see it, I know, all right, that's a Marine. So I walk across the room, and I immediately say like, hey, are you a Marine, or why do you have that haircut? He's like, yeah, I'm a Marine, I'm a reservist, I just had duty, and I'm like, oh, okay, what unit are you with? And we start going, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, this is my champion at this firm. So this guy, I'm gonna be able to speak my language, which is Marine, to him, and he's gonna know that I'm a good dude, we call it good dude, in my language.
You are a good dude.
And so I know he's gonna take care of me for at least that first interview, right? He's gonna get me through to, like, we call it informationals, we're going to get through the informationals, and then I can wow the next person. So we went to informationals. He carried me through the process, just like I thought. And I sit down with a director for the informational, and this is going to sound like a series of very fortunate events, but please just like humor me and say I did a great job. So I sit down with the gentleman, and he's like, "Oh, I see you went to SUNY Binghamton, so did I." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." So we just start, for a half hour, we start talking about SUNY Binghamton, and he didn't ask me any like banking questions, which was great. And you know, we had that connection there, so I'm like, all right, I got my next champion at this firm. And he's a little bit more senior, a little bit more of a decision maker. So you talked about strategic thinking. This is where that kind of came in on who am I meeting and how do I keep on moving in the process. Then we go to the wine tasting event, and this is in the book. And I'm talking to one of the women, and she has this like thick accent, and I just know it. I'm like, all right, that's Long Island, I got this. So I'm like, oh, hey, like, where are you from? And she goes, well, I'm originally from Westchester, but I grew up in Long Island as well. And I'm like, oh, okay, what part? And she's like, you probably never heard of it. It's this place called Belmore. It's on the South Shore. I'm like, no shit, I'm from North Belmore. And I was like, did you go to Grand Avenue? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, did you have Mr. Fox? He's crazy, wasn't he? And then all of a sudden we're talking about Grand Avenue. All the other people at the networking circle leave. And we're just like talking about how she was captain of the cheerleading team and I was playing football, and like, wow, this is so crazy. And I'm like, all right, I got my next champion. So really just, I'll get to like the next, like how I'm not just a complete a-hole and always looking for the next champion soon. But so anyway, we get to the final round interviews, and I'm speaking to a very, very senior banker. She was there for the Lehman bankruptcy, and we are just going through questions, and I'm trying to like, you know, be what they're telling me to be in final round interviews, and then I just crack and I'm just like, all right, tell me about the Lehman bankruptcy. And I kind of rolled the dice there, but she loved it. She wanted to speak about it. She went on for 20 minutes about it, and I said, okay, cool. You know, we had a few more questions like that, and I'm like, hey, I did a lot of stuff in the Marine Corps for diversity. What does Barclays, what does Firm A say about what do you do for you know, what do you do for diversity? And she's like, oh, I head up the women's network. And I'm, oh, okay, I did a lot of work with Sheryl Sandberg. We like revolutionized how the Marine Corps does maternity leave and all these great things. And she was like, yep, you got the offer. So I was always just kind of...
Good job, Bryan.
Thank you. So I always just try and like find that connection. I don't know, like I'll just keep on digging and we'll sit there for an hour, but I'm going to find that connection, and then we can take it from like the formality of this networking to like, let's build a relationship. Yeah. Let's actually get to know each other. A little bit deeper than that. And then now I'm on the flip side of all this recruiting, which is very interesting because I see a couple of my folks in the crowd, which is great. They both did very well, except some more. And now I'm like, all right, I don't want your formalities and like the 20-second pitch. I want like an embarrassing story, something that's gonna make me remember you, and then I wanna be your champion. So I'm trying to flip it so that I coach other people through and finding the champion. If I'm not the champion, then let's find you someone else that is. So that's the whole like, I'm not an a-hole thing. And then the final thing about Beth Briggs' panel, the person that I sat next to and talked about traveling with was my first round interview at Firm A. And all we talked about for the first round was traveling. So it was great.
That's an amazing story. I mean, you are a natural connector, I think, from the success you had in villages when you were part of the Marine Corps, which I can't even begin to imagine, and how you can bring that skill forward to your ability to connect with people in a really authentic way. Having observed you, I know that to be true, and it's really part of how the framework is natural. Please.
Yeah, if you think about attending, paying attention to other people, Bryan was listening to accents, looking for haircuts, paying attention to how civilians were acting as opposed to in the military. He really paid attention and learned and then found a way to connect. It's a masterful story, and they're long-term connections. So it really represents that whole second half of the paradigm, which is attending, connecting, and then doing it together, long-term relationships.
Yeah, and I would say it's very interesting going to now alumni events, and I see folks at firms that I decided either not to go to or they decided not to have me, and we still have a very good relationship.
Yeah.
And there's only one guy that I don't like, and that we'll leave that to the side. But like all these other people are, I consider them friends, and it's not this, you know, oh, we were networking together. It's no, like, hey, how are you? How are your kids? Or how's whatever. It's really building that relationship. And yeah, the end goal, the immediate goal was to get the job, but the end goal is the relationship.
Thank you. We're going to open up for questions. I do want to note, because I don't know if Diane will promote this, but one part of the book, the end part of the book has these amazing exercises. This is like Diane in your pocket, because there's all these wonderful, there's wonderful exercises to help you really work on your voice, how to work on your presence, how to work on connecting, how to work on co-creating with someone. So I find that to be incredibly helpful and such a gift as part of the book. So thank you, Diane. But I do want to open it up for questions. I know that there's some cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, but I think this is such rich examples that were shared. And if you have questions for Diane too, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. So any questions? We do have a mic, but feel free to jump out. Yes, please.
All this, which you have explained,
If you don't mind using the microphone, that would be great. Thank you.
what you have explained is really applicable when you're face to face with the other person. How do you apply it when you're on the telephone, when you don't see the person? How do you convince the person? You want to accomplish what you're seeking to accomplish. How do you do that? Because you may be at a disadvantage because you don't see the other person. The other person doesn't know you.
So the parts of the paradigm that still apply are intending, knowing the outcome that you want from that interaction, messaging, but you don't have the body language. You still have the auditory cues. You have the words and you have the voice. Okay. So you're missing the visual for sure, but you do have other messaging aspects. And you can present your words and your voice congruently. So that's the presence piece and messaging. In terms of attending to them, you can only attend to the auditory. But you still can connect. You can connect with them and create a shared focus. Right. It is clearly different because you don't have the visual. When I coach and people ask me to coach on Skype, I don't. You know, because in person is a different experience. But essentially, the paradigm still applies.
You have to realize that a lot is done via Skype or telephone.
Yes, well.
You know?
Yes.
So, how do you make up for what is not, what you're missing when you're not face to face to the person?
Jessy?
Well, thank you so much for bringing out that question, because it's definitely something that we often get. And in this technology space that we have, in the way that we communicate today, it's certainly something that's different. And the way that I would think of it is actually not only focusing on the limitations of technology, but really thinking about how can I maximize, how can I use the things that I've got to their fullest extent. So even if we don't have the visual aspect, what is it that we can do to maximize the fact that we can hear, but we can also audibly then also connect to show that we're listening. Because when we're together here, I can see, we're picking on you in your hot seat, you're nodding, you can listen attentively. But when you don't have that, if you don't have that, then it's kind of like, oh yeah, I hear you. Oh, right, that happened to you? Like, it's a conversation. So a lot of it is really about using this paradigm and trying to maximize whatever tools that you have at your disposal to the best and fullest that you can in that situation. That's how I would.
And I want to acknowledge Jessy, because every word in this book, Jessy's my brain. I like to take action, but Jessy was a very major part of creating this paradigm, so listen to her.
It was a great
It's whatever she said.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was going to make a comment more than a question. Thank you. To Bryan's point, and also to Anne's, I would guess that after having visited a tribal chief in a village in Afghanistan, approaching someone across the room at a networking event at Stern becomes relatively painless. It's pretty easy to put yourself out there after you've been in that kind of situation, which goes to Anne's point about, trying the different music and not the music that you're comfortable with all the time. And I think for all of us, it probably is worth keeping in mind that whether it's public speaking or approaching your boss or your boss's boss or asking for things, that going sometimes out of that comfort zone can really help you make big strides in the things that will come a lot easier afterwards.
So there is a chapter in the book, now I'm going to do a little selfless promotion, or whatever you call that. So the first 2 chapters are the theory, the framework. The 3rd chapter are 9 different stories, and these are pieces of 4 of them. So Jessy's is very strong about intent, because she knew what she wanted, and all the other aspects of the paradigm. Jenn, well, you can see Jenn's presence. You can't help but see Jenn's presence. But also it's about messaging, taking quantitative, transferring qualitative information to quantitative information in a way that the people could get it. So very strong intent, strong messaging. Anne's, in terms of presence, how she managed to show up, all the work that she did to then show up and get the job, her dream job. And Bryan's represents the attending, connecting, and together. So after reading these stories, there is a chapter, and this addresses your point, about nervousness. And Susan, you also brought that up. So there's a chapter on using this impact mindset to reframe some of the situations, because I hear the same things again and again. I get nervous, I get distracted, I ramble. So there is a way to address all of those using this framework and a mindset of thinking about your communication situation slightly differently. And then, as Beth said, there are curated exercises, some of which we do in classes here and in coaching sessions. We thought we'd get everybody up, circling their arms and screaming the letters of the alphabet, but then we decided against it for energy. But so there are exercises, and then there are also ways to practice, because the only way to really make a change in your behavior and the way you approach things is to keep practicing them. So it's very easy for someone to tell you how to speak more slowly or more clearly, or how to sit up, but it's not going to just happen magically. You have to continually practice it, and it's the 10,000 hours of practice. So to create a new habit, a new behavior, takes practice. So there also is in the book, at the end of the book, lots of different ways to practice skills, to self-assess, to self-correct, and so anyway, it's for you.
Yeah.
The book is for
I think
you.
we'll have time for one more question. I'm hearing from my background folks.
Angelo, hi.
Hi, Professor Lennard. So I just wanted to say something based on the comment on the phone and the other sort of medium, sort of a comment. But I guess if you had to paraphrase your book title for the Daily News of the New York Post, I would probably call it Secrets of Influence. And I'll give you an example of how what her question was sort of relates to the things you teach. And while I haven't read the book, I do plan to. But in one of your classes, I graduated in 2017, even though my job was in communications, that I currently still do, one of the things that Professor Lennard taught in class was regarding PowerPoints. And I tended to start to see myself as looking at things in the way that I work and communicating with people in the media and whatever, in a one-dimensional way. And I saw PowerPoint in the same way, just this thing right there. And Professor Lennard articulated a PowerPoint as being something you tackle with touch, turn, talk. And I said to myself, okay, that is very interesting because I now have this new mindset and this new ability to look at something old in a new way. So if I'm on the phone now, even to this day, I don't look at that in a one-dimensional way. I think, how can I touch, turn, talk on the phone? And that was the one thing I picked up from the class that I'm sure is in the book in some form or fashion. But I'm sure the book is a euphemism for it. But and I don't mean necessarily secrets of influence in a nefarious way, but more in a communicative way and in a communal way, and in a way that all of us can sort of engage with others in a way that allows us to progress. So I think that that's probably the best way that I would answer the question about Skype or the phone, is looking at things in a way where you can see something or act in a way that's three-dimensional. So that's what you taught me.
That's great.
Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. Thank you, our panel. Thank you for a terrific and thought-provoking conversation. Thank you, Diane, for sharing your book and your insights and your paradigm with us. It was fascinating. Thank you, Beth, for moderating. Thank you, Jessy, Jenn, Anne, and Bryan for sharing your stories and your insights. I kept waiting and waiting, and I was expecting for it to drop off, but each story was just as fascinating as the next, and you were completely engaging. In a few moments, we'll transition to the reception portion of the evening, where we encourage everybody to continue the conversation. Diane has graciously agreed to sign books. They'll be available for purchase from the NYU bookstore.
I'm excited about that part.
I'm excited too. Just a reminder, your engagement with NYU Stern enriches our vibrant alumni community, and I encourage all of you to continue coming out to events in the future, as well as supporting Stern's fundraising initiatives. I know many of you already contribute to Stern and support Stern as I do. In case you feel inspired this evening, we do have envelopes available at the reception desk if you'd like to contribute. And to all our contributors, thank you again. We do have small tokens of our appreciation.
Swag.